then John, and uh, and that's the way it was with Jerry and John, which means, in my opinion, John should have been at least on the ballot for the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Right.
But then Roger Craig should have been in.
Yeah.
So what do I know? It's kind of like me in Florida State. Hey, I was back when we started that dynasty, and the first 3 years of that dynasty. And back then, I shared time with Sammy Smith, who was a 19th draft. So I only had 1 year left. And I used that 1 year, to put myself in a position, obviously to go in the first round. But back then, we were mostly passing team. And it was, it was more about the impact you had and not necessarily the stats.
Right.
And, and I think that should have had me long ago based on some of the ones that have gone into the Hall of Fame at Florida State. I should have been in. But you know what? The older I get, the less I worry about it. But it do piss me off, though.
Hell yeah.
The same way I'm sure Roger Craig won't say it. But that man should have been in. Because they, guys have gotten in like Marshall Falk, with similar, pretty much the template of Roger Craig, but he's in.
Yeah.
And Roger should be in, man. But hey, again, what do I know? I'm just a old dude, retired player that many think was all right, wasn't that good, But me, I tend to differ.
100%. And I'm gonna tend to differ with that opinion right there, because you started in 3 NFC Championship games. You won this championship. Well, there we go. You won this ring right here for our team, and I remember all that. So we're gonna get into that. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Digital Dreaming Off the Gridiron podcast. I'm your host, Austin Lee. I'm joined today by 49ers legend, Florida State legend, 3-time NFC Championship starting returner, 49ers, second leading rusher for the first 3 seasons of the 90s, in addition to Super Bowl 29 champion, starting returner, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Dexter Carter. Dexter, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. And I tell you what, hey, one thing, you probably mentioned it and I missed it, but you know what? The older I get, the more these things to me are emphasized, because you know what? Again, some people, I appreciate my career the older I get.
Yeah.
And some people, especially younger people, they don't know and they don't remember. So I don't have anything against them for that. But being 170 pounds and doing what I did, and for Carmen Policy and John McVay to draft me in the first round, and I don't have to sit and explain the value and the intelligence of those guys. They knew what they were doing. And, and they didn't draft me to come in and be a starter. They drafted me to come in and relieve John Taylor at punt returns and take over kickoff returns. And, it was a West Coast offense, so you really didn't have a third down back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I'm proud of myself for is that I was able to come in and do the same thing I've done on every level, high school, college, and the NFL. I came in. They probably didn't expect me to be much of an impact, but I worked my way up as a freshman at Florida State, as a freshman, in high school and the 49ers, worked my way up through training camp and was second team. But when Roger got hurt about 5 or 6 games into the season, you know what? I was second team. I had bust my butt to earn it. And at 170 pounds, I was running between the tackles and, displaying my speed and ended up leading the team in rushing as a rookie. So, you know what? Those are things that I am very, very proud of, man.
100%. Let's talk about that. Obviously, that rookie season in 1990, that was the 49ers looking for their three-peat. They went 14-2. You were thrust on the scene, like you said, for John McVay, calling policy. Talk to me about that experience. So obviously, you mentioned it. Roger goes down. What was going through your mind, obviously, through training camp, and then when you got your opportunity, and obviously as that transition to the playoffs, how was that for you?
You know what? As I said, that my mind from Pop Warner has been working. I've been told I was undersized, wasn't big enough, couldn't do it. So you know what? It was nothing phasing me.
Right.
I like as a coach, and I coached from Pop Warner to, Power 5 at Florida State. And when I coach and I expect a certain accountability, a certain effort, you can't teach effort.
Right.
And because I personally experienced it, that one, you might not be the best, you might not be the fastest, you might not be the strongest or the biggest, but effort matters. And it makes the difference, because I know, and I think any teammate that I've ever played with on any level or coach would tell you that they don't ever remember me playing lackadaisical, not hustling, and not finishing a play. Right. Like finishing a play to the point probably defenders probably got pissed off because, Dex, this is walkthrough, man. But no, that wasn't what I was made of, And so when I came in at to San Francisco, when I saw Jerry Rice catch a ball every single time, catch a slant at 5-6 yards and take it 50, that was what we did at Florida State. Yeah. It wasn't no, and so no matter who came in to San Francisco, whether it was, and I remember Terrell Owens in my last year, he did it. So it's like, that's what we did. So my effort is what allowed me to, the athletic ability is God-given, but with the size, the effort, tenacity behind Roger Craig. And when I got the chance, it didn't faze me. I just did what I always do. But I tell you what, man, having a guy like Roger Craig, who wasn't afraid of competition, that opened up and would share things with you to help you out, from just a professionalism perspective, man, that dude was off the chain. And I appreciate it. Man, I did an autograph session with him about 2.5, 3 months ago. Hadn't seen him in literally 10 years plus. And you know what? Same old guy. Still looked like he can run, but he was still that generous guy that he always was. So very appreciative of him, man.
100%. Obviously you have a role model like Roger Craig, like you said, Jerry Rice, obviously all the playmakers, Hall of Famers. Roger should be in the Hall of Fame. I agree with you on that. You should also be in the 49ers Hall of Fame at minimum, if not Forest Hall of Fame. So yeah, you mentioned Florida State and kind of their offense. Let's kind of talk about that, obviously, and maybe your early life. So from your early years, was football your first love, or how did you get into football?
You know what? Believe it or not, at 8 years old, when I was old enough to play Pop Warner, my mom was a football fan now. My mom was a Dallas Cowboy fan. Ooh. So obviously I became a Dallas Cowboy fan, and was until 1990, when I realized that they were going to be our nemesis for the next 3 to 4 years. Yeah. To get to the Super Bowl. Yeah. So I grew to hate them. But growing up, my mom was a Cowboy fan, man, and I idolized Tony Dorsett because he was a smaller guy, and and I was a smaller guy, so I started playing football. And my brother, who's a year older than I, he and I both played sports year round. When football came around, it was football. When track came around, it was track. When basketball and baseball. And what I realized early on, baseball was my thing. Baseball was my first love. Football just came easier. But baseball, man, I'm telling you, man, I could steal bases, I could hit, I could play center field. I always played outfield. I caught, I pitched in Little League. And just to hit something on baseball right quick that many people don't know, I played baseball all the way up until my freshman year in high school. And for some reason, the baseball coach, the players didn't want to play for him. And you know what? And I let that influence me, and I stopped playing baseball up until my senior year, when my running back coach on the football team became the baseball coach. Then we all came back. And I'm going to tell you what, we were off the chain good. Yeah. And I batted 500. I won most outstanding offensive player, offensive MVP that year. I stole bases, whether I was on first, second, or third. I stole home. I stole every base. I caught everything in the outfield. And the Pirates, the Padres, and the Reds, they came to almost 85-90% of all my games my senior year. And the only thing suspect about my game was, to give you an indication, when I went to the combine, you know how we tested in 225, bench 225?
Yeah.
Well, I benched it I say 2.5 times. Okay. Because I got it up 3, but I think they helped me on the 3rd one. But that wasn't my strength.
Yeah.
Like at Florida State high school, I was squatting 600. By the time I left Florida State, I was squatting 700. So my quads, that was my strength, not my bench. So in center field, I could throw the ball accurate to home plate, but I couldn't get it in the air to home plate. So I remember one of the games, one or two of the scouts, they said, hey, if we draft you and start you out in our farm program, what would you think about that? Now, first of all, I'm from a small town in South Georgia where we got lots of farms, okay? 3 red lights and a flashing light. To be honest, my daughter keeps calling me, man. I don't know. But anyway, they from starting out in our
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. My daughter keeps calling me, and I don't think anything's wrong. She said call when I get a chance, but she's still calling me, man. So it interferes with our video. So I apologize.
No worries.
But anyway, they asked me how would I feel about starting out in their farm program if they drafted me, and I had already signed my scholarship with Florida State, and my plan was to play baseball for Coach Martin and football for Coach Bowden.
Yeah.
And I took them, plus, man, when they said farm system, hell, I thought they were talking about, man, on the farm. I don't know. Hey. So I didn't really consider what they said and knew what they were talking about. So my plan was to go to college and, hey, play baseball and football. And, hey, if baseball was it, great. If football was it, great. But anyway, so I went to Florida State, and what's funny is I played my first year. I did not get redshirted. And then after the season, baseball comes around. I never talked to Coach Bowden about playing baseball. I just thought it was like high school. When baseball come around, you play. When track come around, you run. So I went to baseball. And then and spring football had started, but I went to baseball. So I come back over that night for dinner at the football facility, and Coach Bowden was like, hey, buddy, where were you today? And I'm like, I was at baseball, coach. And he said, oh, no, that's not how it works. So I never played baseball in college, but I did run track because you would do track and without a conflict in spring football.
Yeah.
But baseball, Coach Bowden, I guess he didn't know I played in high school. I don't know, because Dion played, Ronald Lewis played, so I guess he just didn't think I was good enough. I don't know. But to finish up the baseball, years later, 1995, the year after we won the Super Bowl, I was a free agent, and I signed with the Jets for 1 year, which, I don't remember that year because it was terrible. The Jets were terrible. It was just all terrible. But I fortunately came back to the 49ers. But during that off season, after the Super Bowl, in between reporting to the Jets, I lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Gary Sheffield and I were friends. And I used to go out to batting practice and stuff with Gary. And Gary said, dang, Dex, man, you're pretty good, man. You should come out for a tryout. So I was like, cool, man. I've been wanting to play anyway. I didn't tell the Jets. So I go out to one of their tryouts. In the first 5 minutes of the tryout, it was some little win, not nothing that I thought was a big deal, but they threw the ball to me, and somehow that ball moved in the wind and hit me on my non-glove index finger
Oh,
and broke it.
oh,
Yes, it broke it, man. And you know what? So that ended my baseball because it was bad. It hurt like crazy. Even though I went through the workout anyway, and I went 1 for 3 batting with one arm.
what?
And it was an infield hit, and I beat it out to first base. But obviously that wasn't good enough still because I couldn't throw and all that stuff. So at that point, I had to, call the Jets and tell them what happened, and they flew me up, and I had surgery. And for me personally, that somewhat affected me, being up in New York because it was hard to hold on to the ball, and when it got cold, it was definitely difficult. But I never use it as an excuse. This is the first time I'm ever mentioned it. But when you have a broken finger, you break it in July, you break it in early July, you start training camp in July, mid-July, and then season starts. It really didn't have much time to heal, but it is what it is.
100%. No, and I think, like you said, I mean, being able to be a dual sport athlete, that definitely helps you kind of become more versatile. But, like you said, not having the opportunity to play at Florida State, right? It kind of, it hindered you, right? In kind of, being able to refine that aspect of your game. But I think it is what it is. I think, ultimately it worked out for the best, because, the NFL career is pretty stellar. But like you said, your teammate Dion Primetime, we're gonna talk about that in a bit. But basically, he got the opportunity to play both sports. I mean, so let me ask you, if you had the opportunity to play at Florida State, do you think you would have been able to, have a successful MLB career like Dion and Bo Jackson?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Ask anybody who saw me play in high school.
Yeah.
Ask my coaches, my teammates, man. I am telling you, I'm gonna tell you who. Without the power that this guy has, and I'm getting ready to tell you, without the power that he has, but the way he plays the outfield, other than running into walls and getting hurt, but his entire game, when I see it, it's me, except the power when he's hitting. He's a cousin of mine. He played at my high school. He was the second pick in the 2012 draft out of high school. Byron Buxton for the Minnesota Twins.
Oh, wow.
Center fielder. He's a cousin of mine. When I see him play, and he had baseball and football scholarships to the University of Georgia and other places. But of course, when you're the second pick, of course you're going major league. Yeah. But that was me.
100%.
Byron, I'm not comparing myself to him, but as I said, being able to run the bases and base hit, run out, beat out infield hits, catch anything in the outfield, that was me. So it would have been interesting.
It definitely would have been. No, I mean, because you got me excited just thinking about that. Because it would have been, maybe you and Dion could have been on the Braves, the '95 World Series. So you could have been on the championship Super Bowl team and on the Braves in the same year. Also you being from Georgia,
Hey man, you never know. I just know God blessed me with baseball ability that I know was competitive to being able to go to the next level.
100%. Now let's talk about the next level. You mentioned Florida State, and you played on so I want to talk about your Florida State career because, on the 86, 87, 88, 89 team, you mentioned kind of the offense, and you obviously got to play with, Dion, with Leroy Butler, Hall of Famers, Sammy Shields, multiple Super Bowl champions. So talk to me about your Florida State career. What was your favorite highlight from that career? How did it set you up for success in the NFL?
Oh, man. Well, I tell you what, the one thing I learned very early on at Florida State was the way I practiced and prepared and thought about how important the game was to me. Everybody felt that way at Florida State.
Yeah.
The coaches did. I'm telling you, man, it was incredible the practice that we had. Back then, 87, my sophomore year, we finished number 2 in the country. 88, we finished number
3.
3 in the country. Yeah. And in 89, my senior year, AP, we finished 3. UPI, I think we finished 2nd.
Yeah.
And but we every year back was the beginning of that 14-year dynasty where we were never ranked lower than 5 in the country ever. And my 3 years, we were never ranked lower than 3. Back then, every year we would just reload. because we had guys that were 2 and 3 deep. If they came in the game, we had no drop off. That's why in today's time there's a transfer portal. Back then, I don't think guys would have transferred anyway because of the competitiveness that we enjoyed, and that's what made us as good as we were. That's why when it came game time, man, game was easy for us. The only thing that kept us from a national championship at least 2 out of those 3 years, no, actually all 3 years, but was the Miami Hurricanes. Miami Hurricanes, that's why I would love to see Miami continue to get better, and Florida State do what we're doing, because Coach Norvell has them coming back strong. And Florida needs to get better, because when those 3 top teams in Florida are where we used to be, it's good for college football. So yeah, man, it was thoroughly. I mean, back then the New Year's Day Bowls were the playoffs of today, and we played in sophomore year. We played in the Fiesta Bowl, beat Nebraska. Sophomore year, played in the Sugar Bowl New Year's Day against Auburn. Finished in the top, as 3, and then again senior year we played against Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. So technically, if we had a playoff back then, we'd have had at least 2 national championships. We'd have had the first 2 national championships in Florida State history.
100%. I totally agree with that. And obviously, like you said, the Miami Hurricanes, with Michael Irvin and Dion, kind of going head to head, which we later saw with the Niners, right? Talking about that, how was that kind of those games?
Hey, before I tell you about that game, you talking about at Miami or San Francisco?
Miami.
Okay, yes. Matter of fact, 1987, I believe I'm correct on the numbers.
Yeah.
In one game, there were 36 players from both teams that not only got drafted and played in the NFL, but made significant contributions in the NFL. That's how big those Miami Florida State games were back then.
Yeah.
It was incredible, man. And I'm going to tell you, Dion was came is when he realized that no matter how good he would be at corner as a DB, that based on his research in the NFL, that they didn't get paid well. No, they just didn't. He had to figure out a way to devise a plan to create value in the position. And he did, man. He took that primetime name that he was given in high school and figured out how he could monetize it. I'm telling you, he started wearing the gold, and see, this is all about his community, his culture, where he grew up. He grew up in a community where he saw drug dealers that wore the gold chains, that had the cars, that protected young athletes. Yeah. See, a lot of people, drug dealers look bad upon, but see, what they did is when they saw an athlete that was good enough to go to the next level, they protected them and made sure that nobody tried to get them to sell drugs or do bad things. So they would protect them from that perspective. And that was Dion. But Dion, when he saw the nice cars, it was drug dealers. When he saw the jewelry, it was drug dealers. Now he never drank and he didn't curse and do all that stuff, but he wanted to emulate that based on success. So he started wearing the primetime jewelry and talking primetime, saying what he was going to do. But the difference between Dion and some others is that Dion never talked bad about anybody. He never tried to diminish another player, but he would say what he was going to do, and darn well if he didn't do it. And it was incredible having him on your team, because I'm telling you, man, at Florida State, I wouldn't change a thing. It was absolutely beautiful. From the campus, the experience, the facilities, just the recognition. It was awesome, man. And so Dion primed himself, man, back then. So it was nothing new to us who had witnessed it at Florida State.
100%. Yeah, like you said, Florida State, Miami, Florida State was a dynasty in itself. Like you said, the 14-year dynasty. So it was phenomenal what you were able to accomplish. And like you said, if the playoff system was there, I mean, I would have loved to see that because I mean, you definitely would have got some trophies. So, but it is what it is. So timing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, and one thing to hit on too, because just to let people know pretty much where I came from a performance perspective, and let people know Sammy Smith was in Deion Sanders' class, and that '85 class that Deion them came in, and they were the #1 class in the country. Sammy Smith was 6'2", 225, ran a 4.40. Matter of fact, Deion was the anchor on our 4x1 relay team at Florida State. It was 3 NFL first-round draft picks, me, Deion, and Sammy Smith, and Arthur Blake was the only true trike guy, and he was a 2-time Olympian in the '84 and '88 Olympics while he was at Florida State.
Yeah.
So, so Sammy Smith was actually our anchor. Deion was third, Arthur was second, and I was first. Now I mentioned that because so we're talking about Sammy Smith, who he won the MVP in the Georgia-Florida game, came to Florida State highly recruited. I came in as a freshman the year after him. Team played as a freshman. As a sophomore, Deion had 1,000. I had 800 as a sophomore. So it goes to show you, Sammy could have easily had close to 2,000 yards. I could have had easily over 1,000 if we both weren't there. But I knew for the next those 3 years, I was going to be playing behind him. So to even have 1 year by myself in a majority passing attack my senior year, I only had 600 and some yards rushing as a senior. So some people wonder, how in the heck did he become a first-round draft pick? Well, we finished, as I said, UPI 2 and UPI 2 and 3 on the other ranking in the country. So the notoriety was there, but in my opinion, I was a projected 3rd through 5th round pick when the season ended. The reason why I moved up is because I went to the Senior Bowl, started, and won Most Outstanding Offensive Player, got a trophy. Now my team lost, but I got the offensive MVP on my team. Then I went to the combine, ran a 4.34, vertical jump 38. I killed the shuttle and all that stuff. Now I won't mention the bench again, like I did earlier, because the bench press was terrible. But that's not why they drafted me. So after those 2 postseasons, there was a number of teams that had projected me up in the first round. So the back-to-back Super Bowl champions were the ones, with the great general manager John McVay and President Carmel Policy, that they were drafted, in my opinion, for leisure, because they had everything. They had the receivers, they had the running backs, they had the offensive lineman, defense. So they saw a guy that could come in and potentially, be a glimpse of what Dave Meggett did for the Giants. Now, I don't know if I reached that level or not, because it was just 2 different systems. But Dave Meggett, I think that I came in and did what I was supposed to do, because again, I think I did more at running back than they anticipated. And as a return guy, I was voted as on the all-time team as a kickoff return guy.
Yeah.
Not to mention, my career average was over 9 yards a punt return. So I think over a 7-year period, I think that I exceeded what they brought me in for. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, he's a first rounder. He should have been a 1,000-yard rusher and this and that. You know what? If they understood why and the reason I was drafted, I exceeded those expectations. So I'm thankful that I had that opportunity, and I'm also very thankful, for the career that I had.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of to that point, let's talk about kind of your career you had So you mentioned your rookie season, kind of coming in after Roger and becoming the second leading rusher on the team. Now, obviously, and you were there when Joe was there, and obviously Joe and Steve were in that transitional phase, right? So obviously the second season, 1991, Steve was basically, taking the helm after Joe, went out with that injury. He suffered in the 1990 NFC Championship game, which was obviously a heartbreaking game. I don't want to get into that because I'm still, it's still heartbreaking. So talk to me about kind of 91, and then obviously, like I said, the 92, 93 seasons, leading up into the Super Bowl year. Kind of how did your evolution as a player and as a returner kind of evolve?
Okay, I came in and I immediately became the return guy, and a lot of people focusing on that return area first. Um, if anybody's ever been to Candlestick Park, they're off the bay. Baseball center fielders, outfielders had issues. Me as a kick returner had issues with that ball being kicked and and the ball swirling in the wind. So there were probably maybe 10 times that at the beginning of the season, it took me time to get accustomed to that. And there were times where the ball would drop and I misjudge it and it goes down. I mean, it was just one of those muffs that you pick up and you run. Okay. But unfortunately back then, if you remember, muffs were considered fumbles back then.
Yeah.
So when people look at the fact that even though I touched the ball over 1,300 times in my career, I had 30, quote unquote, 30 fumbles, but I only lost 8. But when people look at 30 fumbles, they're like, oh, he was fumble prone. About 15 of those, between 10 and 15, were muffs on those kickoff returns or the return in general that I picked up and ran. You know what I'm saying? So, I take offense to people because some people have said, oh, he was fumble prone. No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, nonetheless, I still had a productive kickoff return year. I didn't return punts. Being honest, Dion returned punts at Florida State. So I did them in high school, but I never did them at Florida State. I did kickoff return. So when I got to San Francisco, they wanted me to do it, but I'm not kidding. When I felt that wind in Candlestick, I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous. So I said, hey, John, you're gonna have to return these things, man. And plus I was backup running back. And then, again, my first game starting was on Monday night against the Rams on ABC, and was my coming out party. I had 124 yards rushing on 13 carries. I had a 74-yard touchdown, which was my first touchdown, of my rookie year. So it was huge. That was big. And then I went on, to, gain 460 yards in like 6 games. I think I started.
Yeah.
So in my first 2 years, I had almost 1,000 yards over a 4-yard average. But then Ricky Waters came in and became the guy because, again, I wasn't supposed to be the guy anyway. So in those first 2 years, man, I think from a rushing perspective, I mean, I ran between the tackles. I showed them my speed. So I think I was productive. That's just not what they had me there to do. Now, today, if I was in Kyle Shanahan's system or if I was in his dad's system with the Broncos, I think I could have performed well at running back. You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, Ricky Waters and Amp Lee came in and they became, the running back guys. And then my third year, I took over punt returns also. And my first year returning punts, I was second in the NFL. Should have made the Pro Bowl that year on punt return, but Eric Metcalf got it, even though my stats were better than his, But yeah, man. So that was pretty much my role going into those NFC championship years. Now, the first year we went to the NFC championship game and lost in the last 3 seconds to a field goal to the Giants. And then my second year, we didn't make the playoffs, but we were the hottest team at the end of the season. But unfortunately, we let a few games go at the beginning of the season. And the way the season went that year, there were a lot of teams. We won 10 games, but there was a lot of teams that won 11 through 14 games, and we didn't get in the playoffs. And then, of course, the years that Dallas 91, what was it, 92, 3, and 4,
Yeah.
all were Dallas. Man, those were the years, man. I'm telling you, hey, whoever won that NFC Championship game was gonna win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it was awesome, man. And I remember 92 when Dion came to us. I remember when word got around the locker room that we were looking to bring him in, along with all these other free agents that we, rented for a year, but I'm telling you, because I played at Florida State. Now we had William Floyd, who was a rookie, but never played with Dion. Dedrick Dodge was there. He played with Dion and me. Now, but I know they came to me. I don't know if they went to Dedrick or not, but they came to me. I know Harris Barton did, Steve, Jerry. It was about 5 guys, and they asked me. They weren't happy with Dion coming in. They want, because they thought, with San Francisco being that West Coast cool, laid back. Now Ricky and William brought some of that flair now, but Dion was a different player.
Yeah.
So they thought it was going to be disruptive to the locker room, and they were like, "Dex, man, what's up with him?" And I was like, "Hey guys, let me tell you, if you play against Dion, you're not going to like it." Because he tells you what he's going to do and he does it. He high steps, he dances, he's going to, just who he is. But I was like, I'd say it, but I'm telling you what, when he plays with you, you're going to love him.
Yeah.
And every one of those guys that came to me with that concern, after before midseason, every one of them came and said, Dex, you were right. Because they saw, he's going to be prime time. You ain't going to see a whole lot of Dion. But what he brought to the table and his work ethic on the field was unchallenged, was unquestionable. He was the same it was at Florida State. First one on the field, last one off. And I'm talking about never missed a practice, never missed a rep. And he was the same way at San Francisco. Matter of fact, he was so much that way at San Francisco. Usually when the first team is up, the scout team is giving them the look on offense and defense. That entire year, Jerry, scout team or not, Jerry he's going all out every play.
Yeah.
Every single rep Jerry went that year, Dion was opposite him in practice. It doesn't matter if the other 10 guys were scout team or not, Dion was on Jerry. It was incredible. It was beautiful, man. But and you know what? And very instrumental. Obviously, he won Defensive Player of the Year. So it was beautiful, man. It was beautiful. You had Steve Young dancing after, touchdowns. Jerry dancing. Man, they never danced before, but they danced because there was a fusion of Deion Sanders, Ricky Waters, William Floyd, and Dedrick Dodge too. Dedrick Dodge, I'm telling you, Dedrick was like that at Florida State, man. Dedrick was a great safety, man. So him and of course Merton, Eric Davis, McDonald, all those guys, man. It was awesome, man. I tell you what, man, I know I'm jumping around a lot, but as I sit and I think about it, I thank God for. I always thank him, but I'm just publicly thanking him for what he blessed me with, the ability, the confidence, the work ethic, everything he blessed me with to make it from birth to where I am now. Because at my size, I wasn't supposed to be where I'm at. I wasn't, but he blessed me to be in a position that on every level that I played on, I was instrumental in the success. And, regardless of what people say, it's ironic that every team I ever played on won. And I think I had a little something to do with it. But I'm also thankful that I had a chance to play with guys that, about at least eight Hall of Famers. I was able to go and enjoy Brian Young invited me to his this year, but I would have went anyway because I played with Leroy Butler and I came in as freshmen together at Florida State. So having a chance to experience those two guys going to the Hall of Fame, and of course all the other guys, man, I couldn't have a better life. And then I've got wonderful kids, which I'm sure we'll talk briefly on it later. But man, I am telling you, I have been one lucky son of a gun.
Yes, sir. No, you definitely, and like you said, God-given talent. I mean, all praise to the big man upstairs. But let's actually talk about it. You were jumping around, but you actually, you got back right where I want you to go, because you talked about Steve Young, talked about those Hall of Famers. Steve Young, 1994 season is considered to be, if not the greatest, the second greatest quarterback season by QB. Outside of Joe's 89 season. The year before, you got drafted. And then obviously that offense was one of the most prolific offenses we'd ever seen. You obviously had, a key contribution to that. And I agree, you were snubbed of the Pro Bowl not once, but twice. You should have also made 94. I don't know what happened. But anyways, so we're going to talk about so let me ask you, with that 94 season, obviously, heading into the NFC Championship game, and obviously all of the kind of like I said, the elements, right? Dion coming in, like, everyone consulting you about Dion, you kind of, be giving him the pass, and everyone kind of gelling together, and, kind of feeling that festivity, feeling that you guys got something special. When you got to the NFC Championship game against Dallas, who you'd lost 2 years, like you said, the Super Bowl, the real Super Bowl, right? 2 years prior, consecutive. When did you feel like, that you felt like, okay, I know we got these boys, you know what I mean? And then obviously the Michael Irvin and Dion matchup, right? Because talk to me about that.
That 94 season, we knew we would meet up with the Cowboys again, but it was something different about that game. We had no fear. We had no thought in our minds that we were going to lose that game. Now, I know every game we go into, we think we're going to win, and there's no thought of losing. But that year was just unquestionable. We knew it would be challenging, but we knew we had somebody that could level the playing field against Michael Irvin. Not saying that our other guys weren't good over the years.
Yeah.
It's the difference. That made a difference. Eric Davis was playing out of Ricky Jackson. Who else we brought in? Oh my goodness, was that Ken Norton's first year?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
that was first
Ken
year, yeah.
Norton. I mean, it was off the chain, man. But it was a confidence, and Steve was in his element, man. Just and Ricky Waters was as good as he can get, man. Ricky was doing his thing, and one key element now, one key. I love Tom Rathman. I love him, love him, love him. But William Floyd brought something that you don't usually get in rookies.
Yeah.
He had a confidence that he could, he had just won the national championship at Florida State, came ready and was a big contributor, obviously, to us winning the Super Bowl. But it was all of the above that just was a great melting pot. That it was not a shock nor a surprise that we were able to take Dallas down the way that we did. And the Super Bowl was just, in our opinion, a no-brainer. We knew that we were going to crush the Chargers. just being honest, we just knew we were going to crush them. We felt they had no shot. At halftime, they had to feel they had no shot. But you know what? We kept the foot on the throat, like Coach Bowden always did at Florida State. Kept the foot on the throat, and you know what? It was just an unquestionable win in that Super Bowl. So, man, that Super Bowl 29 was a great job, a great team put together by McVay and Carmen Policy. And of course, I can't go through this entire interview without mentioning, without mentioning Eddie DeBartolo.
Yeah.
Man, hey, man, I know there's some great owners out there, but Eddie DeBartolo's got to be the greatest, man.
Easily.
And I think you could tell, when the transition of ownership changed, even though it stayed in the family, you could tell there was a difference, from Bartolo into the Yorks. but of course the Yorks have done a good job. But Eddie DeBartolo, man, what he did for the families, the importance and how he made them feel, the things he did that people don't even know he did for families is just incredible, man. Incredible.
Let's talk about your contributions. I want to run through these stats. In 1994, in the NFC Championship game, you had four returns for 65 yards, around 21 average against John Jett, and then in the Super Bowl, you had looks like five returns. Sorry, yeah, four returns for same thing, around 64 yards against John Carney, who's one of the greatest all-time NFL kickers and punters. So, what was it like for you? Obviously, having those key contributions, starting in NFC Championship, and then starting a Super Bowl and coming on the winning side, being thrust in that starting role. How was that? I mean, you're already starting, obviously, the previous 4 years, but tell me about that.
Yeah, you know what? The Super Bowl, man, played in many. I played in 100 NFL games.
Yeah.
In my career. I'm sorry, I'm patting myself on the back for that.
Yeah.
And to be able to in my career score touchdowns on punt return, on kickoff return, as a receiver, and as a rusher. Not many skilled guys can say that.
Yeah.
So I feel very appreciative and accomplished of that. Now, my greatest thing is to be in the Super Bowl. And we return first. So those. I look back at the replay of that, and all I see is cameras clicking in the stands. Man, that is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
To be able to have that opportunity. But man, I think just to look at not just the fact that the success I had on punt returns and kick returns that year, man, it's the fact that I almost got a first down every time I returned a punt.
Yeah.
and I believe average 21 on kickoff returns. Now today, kickoff returns has been pretty much obsolete, just
right.
being honest. I mean, heck, back then you had to catch the ball and down it. Now, all you got to do is let get in the end zone and you wave your hands. Man, that don't make no sense to me.
Yeah.
Because a whole lot of those buffs in the end zone when that wind is swirling, I was made to catch that ball.
Exactly.
I mean, come on, man. But the good thing about it is, hey, you know what? The kickoff return records that stand, will always be. I think even my punt returns, if you look at Florida, San Francisco, I think the only one that can be close to me is what's his name? Dana. What's his name? What was the punt return guy before John Taylor?
Oh God, God's name, Dane. Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He was a good returner. He was a good returner, But I think myself, John Taylor, probably top 3 return guys in Florida State history. Now we've had some flash and dash guys, like the dude from Ohio State that was the return guy for us. I can't remember his name. It's lacking me right now.
Yeah.
But Terry Kirby was. But at the end of the day, I think I'm one of the top return guys that, in my opinion, hadn't got the recognition, attention, or respect. But hey, people forget.
Yeah, but no, that's why we're here, to make them remember. So we out here, baby. So let's talk about kind of, you said 95 season, you got, but you actually, I think you're the first player to have a touch and a return touchdown, yards for 2 different teams in the same season. So tell me about that. How was that like?
Yeah, that year, I was a free agent with the Jets, and in week 11, which was the bye week for the Jets, and the 49ers had already had their bye week. Now, 2 weeks before Rich Kotite released me, I was summoned to his office, and when I first got to New York, I was introduced to Howard Stern. Now, I'm not a big fan of Howard Stern, on the radio. No, how can I say it? I like Howard Stern, but I was introduced through a mutual friend, and I like what he does, but I had a Monday radio show with him, and it was a talk about the Jets that weekend, blah blah blah. Well, if you remember, the Jets were 0-10.
Yeah.
Okay, when I got released. Well, every week I was on that show. Howard Stern ripped the Jets, but like Dex. Now you know y'all suck, right? Now come on, Dex. Y'all suck, right? And I'm like, but no, we just gelling together, we just trying to get it, I was making every excuse. Well, Rich Kotite calls me to his office and he says, I hear you've been talking bad about the team on Howard Stern. And I was like, that don't make any sense. Why would I talk bad about the team, then come back in the locker room and be with this team? I said, did you listen to any of the shows? He said, no. He said, but my friend from Philadelphia told me he listened and you were talking bad about the team. I said, let me tell you something. Don't ever confront me again. If you didn't listen to the show to listen to what I said and what I didn't say, don't ever confront me about that.
Yeah.
I was in 0-10. We went 0-10 because we sucked. Being honest, I mean, we weren't that good of a team, but were impactful on those games that we lost. But pick me back up, bring me out. They brought me out on Wednesday. We played on Sunday, so I was there not even a week, and I was already in a game against the Cowboys and had a good game. But I was happy to be back home. So that allowed me to play in 17 regular season games since the inception of the bye week. I played and no other player had done it. Now Jerry Rice has done it since then when he was released by the Seahawks and went to the Raiders or vice versa.
Yeah.
But I was the first offensive guy to play in 17 regular season games and touch the ball, as a offensive player, something of that nature. You may know more about it than me.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's cool. That's cool that that's in history, and my kids when I'm dead and gone, hopefully will see this show or see the history and writing, and be proud of their granddad and great granddad.
100%. No, they definitely will, because if they see this or if they read about it, then they'll know. So let's talk about obviously, now with Joe and Steve. I forgot to ask you this earlier because you were there when Joe was literally at the peak and then on his way out as MVP, and then Steve coming in and kind of taking the helm and becoming the next guy. What was that like for the locker room?
Oh, I definitely want to talk about that. I'm glad you. I was fortunate in history to deal with two significant transitions that wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
One of them was Joe and Steve, and one of them was I was on the Coach Bowden's last staff when Jimbo Fisher took over.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you about that too. And if you could remind me to tell you after this.
Yeah.
So as a rookie, when I come in, we make it to the NFC Championship game. Joe leaves us, and everything that I ever thought about Joe was proven true. I mean, Joe Cool was it, man. I mean, I love Steve. He won my Super Bowl, and I'll forever be grateful. And he is one of the greatest. But there was something about Joe Montana.
Yeah.
Being in that huddle, man, it was just something about him. But I was taught something my rookie year. Okay, are you still there?
Yeah.
Tried to call me.
Yeah, I got
it. She probably thinks something is wrong because I'm not answering her call. but I should have told her I was doing an interview. Yeah. But I learned that NFL also meant not for long.
Yeah.
And because my rookie year, a dream come true, playing with Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig. And then the second year, I witnessed them get rid of Roger Craig get rid of Ronnie Lott, and get rid of Joe Montana. It was unbelievable that those guys did what they did, but an organization has to do what they think is best and move forward. And with Joe, I remember when he got hurt in the NFC Championship game, I didn't know anything about what was going to happen. Everybody else probably did because they knew Steve had been there for some years and was waiting and all that stuff. I didn't know anything about that. I just knew he was the backup. Well, then I realized Steve comes in and it's like no drop off. I mean, he's balling. He wins. I think he won NFL MVP.
He did. Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, Joe is getting healthy, but he's not practicing with us. But he's healthy enough to throw. And then I see after practice, Jerry would stay after and catch passes from Joe. And then I find out that George has decided that Steve is going to be the guy, and Joe just got to decide to be back up, or they're going to move him. And part of it was the reason Joe couldn't practice with us is, and this is what I heard now, is because, and this is nothing against Steve. I love you, Steve. It's just common knowledge that he could have practiced with us, but that would have given the picture that there was a competition. And there wasn't a competition. And Steve really didn't want Joe looking over his shoulder. He didn't want to have to look over his shoulder at Steve. So they had to move Joe. It is what it is. You know, I get it if Steve felt that way. It was his job. We had quality backups. You know, Steve Bono and I can't remember. Who was it?
Elvis Gerback. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I shouldn't forget Elvis. So Elvis, if you hear this, man, forgive me. I cannot forget you, man. But yeah. It was clear that he had to be moved. So it made me realize, man, you can win 4 Super Bowls for somebody and be healthy, but because of circumstances, hey, team's gonna move on. You know, and then I see Ronnie Lott leave and go to, you know, the Raiders, and then I see Roger leave and go to Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
You know, it just made me realize, man, this game is not for long, and when it ends, we're never ready for it to end. Nobody knows how long it's gonna go, but you know, I'm still fortunate. I got 7 years. You know, twice the average, you know, of an NFL player's career. So I am thankful. I got a chance to at least play a year with Joe, a year with Roger, and a year with two.
100%. And now let me ask you this: you know, because what you just said about Joe and you know how he kind of commanded the presence, commanded the huddle. In the 1992 NFC Championship game, Joe's last game, when he was standing on the sidelines, Steve was getting beaten left to right. Did you think if Joe was put in that game, he would have won?
And which one now?
The 1992 NFC Championship game when Dallas won their first Super Bowl, when they played us, played you, you know, obviously. Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Now that I think about it, I forgot. So there's 90. That's when Joe got hurt.
Yeah.
And then the 91 season, he healed. Excuse me. He healed up, right?
Yeah.
Was he still with us in 92?
Yeah, 92. Yeah, that was last year.
Oh, so he played. Okay, so I was with him for 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's interesting. That's very interesting because that was that wet, rainy, muddy game, right?
Yeah.
You know what? At that time, I don't even think Joe was dressed out. But but if he was, you know, the way the game was going, I mean, the only reason they did not put Joe in my opinion, is because Steve was the future. And did you want to destroy his psyche by King? You know, I think it would have made a difference. I mean, just because putting Joe in, come on, you don't think that would have inspired the offensive line, just everything in general. So yeah, that's one thing that we never know, but there's always that possibility that anybody's thinking, man, he could have made the difference.
100%. Yes. Now let's talk about kind of what you said about your kids and your legacy after you played for 7 years. You ended up with 1,000 rushing yards, over 2,000 to 3,000 return yards, and you kind of, what is your greatest moment from your NFL career? That if you had to pick one.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you what the greatest moment is, but I'm gonna tell you what I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
I played 7 years. Caught touchdown. Had touchdowns every way an offensive player skill guy can have.
Yeah.
I had over 8,000 all-purpose yards.
Yeah.
Over 8,000 purpose yards when you combine rushing, punt return, kick return, receiving. There's not many people that can say that, and so I feel real good about that. Now, the other thing you asked me, you said, I one of the greatest things about my career, I have to say, when I came in as a rookie, with, I mean, not much it being expected from a running back position whenever they drafted me, but to come in and show them that, one, at 170 pounds, that I could run between the tackles when asked, and I could use my speed and quickness when needed. It showed no more than it did in that Monday night game against the Rams, where I had the 124 yards, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
But another game, I had rushing against Pittsburgh as a rookie. So I had the glimpses. That's why I say, if I was in a system of today, like a Alvin Kamara, that would be set up prime for me.
Right.
Right. To succeed, because we deal with a lot. Now we deal with creating mixed matches, and I could be put in the slot. I could be put, in the backfield. So I, like, sometimes the zip code you grow up in can determine, your future, and a lot of times the year you were born in will determine, how successful you will be. Now, I was successful, but I'm just thinking out of the box and saying, what could have been if I was in a different era, at 170 pounds, because I don't think there were many guys 5'9", 170 pounds. Like, even Warwick Dunn, when he came to Florida State, a lot of people called me and said, "Oh my God, we got this player that reminds us of you." Yeah. But Warwick Dunn might have been 5'8" and a half, but he was 185, 90.
Yeah.
I mean, 15 pounds is a big deal.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it is what it is. But yeah, I think, to answer your question, I think that Rams game, my rookie year, is one of my favorites. Now, I love the kickoff returns, the punt returns I had, Monday Night Football against Minnesota. I think I had 2 punt returns for touchdowns against them. I had kickoff returns against, the Saints. Caught touchdown passes from Steve. It was just great, man. I'm running on now. I do apologize, but you just brought back so many memories, and I appreciate talking to you, man, because you're a great interviewer. You allow me to talk, and it's just, hey, man, I appreciate you, man.
Definitely. No, we're gonna do this again, and we got. Yep.
Yeah. But let me quickly. Hey, I'm charging my Tesla now because I'm on the way up. As I segue into my my kids. I've got 5 kids, man. I got a 25-year-old son who is played football at Georgia Southern. He's a receiver. He's in the transfer portal right now. You know, coming out of high school, he was ranked one spot in Florida. He was ranked one spot at 32nd behind Jackson.
Wow.
Lamar was ranked 31 in the state of Florida. My son was ranked 32.
Yeah.
And he had offers from Wisconsin, TCU, Louisville, Auburn, North Carolina, Virginia, with Wisconsin, But anyway, he ended up at Georgia Southern because he thought, well, Jimbo Fisher had taken over Florida State at the time, and his junior year he had all these Power 5 offers, and Jimbo Fisher told him he was going to offer him and never did. So in his mind, he clocked out of these other offers, and he waited and waited, and when guys commit to other schools at your position, that spot is gone. And that's how he ended up at Georgia Southern. But I think he's got a chance. I think he can have a successful career in the league. So he'll do pro day this year, and let's see where chips fall. So I'm excited about it though. That's Dexter Jr., Dexter Carter Jr. And then I've got I got a 21 and 20-year-old daughters, and 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old son. Now I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, 5 kids. Well, I didn't have my first kid until a year after I retired from the NFL at 30.
Yeah.
I wished, I would have loved for them to have experienced that life, but they did get a chance to experience my coaching at Florida State. But my 16-year-old son, and I bet you didn't know this. Did you read about, because it was Sports Center, Max Prep, CBS, it was all over. It went viral about a high school team that lost the state championship because of a bad call this past weekend.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
That was my son's team.
What? Oh my God.
That was us that lost the game because of that. I don't even want to. I better watch my mouth.
That bullshit call. Yeah.
It was not close. It wasn't close. I could not believe it. Now, what should have happened is the other referee should have came in and said, I don't know what you were looking at, but he did not cross that goal line.
Yeah.
So it should have been 4th down, and everything would have rolled on that. You know what I'm saying? We either would have stopped them or they'd have got it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that was a chance for us to win back-to-back state championships. And they took it from us, man. So, and my son, he's a freshman. He started. He made freshman All-American. He's playing in the Adidas FBU All-American game December 19th in Florida. He won Georgia freshman wide receiver of the year. He's been offered by Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Nebraska, South Carolina, and Florida State. And he was offered by all of them, except he was offered by Georgia and Ole Miss in the last month and a half. The rest of them, they offered him this summer.
Oh, you back?
Man, my daughter, I'm like, Jada, I want to interview.
Yeah.
Jeez, she thought something was wrong.
Yeah.
Are you able to, is this live or are you able to clip it together?
Yeah, I clipped it. I paused it when you went off, and now we're starting again.
Okay, good. I think I was at my son, and I think I was saying something about the offers.
Yeah.
Okay, I start back where I think I was. But yeah, Georgia and Ole Miss offered him in the last month and a half. But those other offers, man, Power 5 offers, they came this summer before 9th grade. So he's a wide receiver, man. He's about 6 feet. 155, 60 pounds. I mean, his potential is off the chain. He's gonna be a good one, man. He's gonna be
Yeah.
a good. So I'm proud of him, man. And my 14-year-old, I mean, matter of fact, he's got his playoff game, his second round playoff game today. So I'm excited, man. I I've been a single dad for 13 years, man. I've raised my kids on my own, and now let me make sure I'm not talking bad about their mom.
Yeah.
So, their mom, and one thing that I learned, and this is a good segue. I remember back when uh there was two players that I played with that, other than everybody else, they had some challenges. Bill Romanowski, I don't quite like him because, one, him and I got into it physically in the lounge one day over something stupid. I had my food in the microwave. He had his food in the microwave, and back then we used to open it. If there was room, you put yours in there and you reset it.
Yeah.
On this day, he had a problem with me. Well, he had a problem with me always, because in almost every training camp, he always started a fight with me on pad day. Always. Always. He wouldn't do it with nobody else. I think it was because when we have linebackers blocking running backs, I was a good blocker.
Yeah.
Buddy Ryan noticed it in the Senior Bowl, and that's one thing that got their respect, because they had me blocking, because Buddy Ryan didn't care. You were going to hit. And me and my 700-pound squat, I had great technique that I learned from Florida State. And for a 3 count, I could be in that leverage position, and I can pop you 1,001, 1,002. Now, by the time 1,003 come, then they probably would throw me. But by then, the quarterback should have stepped up, thrown the ball, or gotten out of the pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I used to always get him in practice. He'd get pissed off and want to fight. Well, he ended up, it never carried over to the season except this one time. And he got pissed off. And what happened is, he opened the let's see, I put my food in the microwave. He opened it, took it out. I took it and put it back in. And as I closed the microwave door, he rushed me. I mean, he jumped me and, around the neck, and he knocked me back on a table. Now, it didn't last very long because the other players jumped in. You know what I'm saying? Because they knew that crap was BS. Now, all these years have passed. I'm talking about 2 years ago. He is on ESPN on I forgot the radio show, the famous dude, one of the talk shows.
Stephen A.
Not Stephen A. The white dude.
Skip Bayless.
Not Skip.
Mad Dog.
Nope, not Mad Dog. Keep going.
Let's see. Shoot. God. Ryan Russillo.
No. He's probably the most famous of them all. He irritates you a little bit, but he knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, darn. Anyway,
yeah,
it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Anyway, he brings me up in this interview, not the interviewer, Bill Romanowski. Okay, because he talks about, the guy asked him about players,
Colin Cowherd, right?
Yes. Asked him, he said, when players, if you get into it with a guy, how do you get over it? And he said, oh, I do. He said, I remember that time that I choked Dexter Carter in the, in the locker room. And you know what? I got over it. I went out and I intercepted the ball 3 times that day in practice. It didn't bother me. First of all, he said, I had 3 sacks and da-da-da-da-da. First of all, we don't even tackle in practice. Never during the season did we ever tackle in practice. We never wore pads ever in practice. So one, he's lying about that. Talking about it didn't bother him. First of all, he did not choke me. He said no. He did put his hands around my throat, knock me back on the table. He said that he choked me and lifted me up on the wall. There was no wall even close. He sensationalized it. Man, that pissed me off. All these years, you want to sit there and lie. Matter of fact, he wrote a book years ago and he put it in there, lying. Okay, but anyway, so I don't like him. And the other one, Charles Haley.
Yeah.
Now, at least Charles Haley had a reason though. See, back then we thought Charles had he was on Ritalin back then because that's what they had him on to try to calm him down. Some days he'll come to work and he's calm and he don't say nothing. And then some days you could tell he didn't take his medicine and he's off the chain. And it didn't matter if it was Joe Montana or Coach or who, he would go off on him. Kind of just not. But when I say go off, it was kind of like some people, if it wasn't you, you would think it was funny. Okay. But now, all these years later, I realized, or we all realized, Charles had bipolar. See? So that's the segue to what I was going. I was married for 12 years to my kid's mom. But the entire time there were things that surfaced that we didn't know what it was, but I dealt with it. But come to find out, she was bipolar. And I just couldn't handle it any longer, right? So, we divorced and I raised the kids. Now she's a much better today. Thank God. Our marriage just didn't endure it. I'm just the one that, raised our kids. But you know what? Hey, I still say she's a great mother, and I never talk bad about her to my kids. That's why they love her today. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only reason that I mentioned it, that I was a single dad, is because, that's been my focus for the last 13 plus years, is raising, my kids. And I'm proud of what I've done, and, but their mom lives in Ohio and we live in Georgia, like my 16-year-old, Ohio State invited him up to the Ohio State Michigan game. And you know what? On the way through Cincinnati, you know what we did? We scooped his mama up and she had a chance to enjoy, that experience, So it meant a lot to him and it meant a lot to her. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. But life is good, man. Hopefully, I have, two NFLers and one NBA player. And I'm a granddad. My 21-year-old daughter made me a granddad 2 years ago. So I'm a fireball of excitement there. And then my 20-year-old is just figuring out life. And hey, man, life is good.
Life is good. No, it's definitely great. Obviously, like you said, legacy living through your kids. Before you go, I want to ask you one last thing about the current situation of the Niners. Your teammate, the GOAT, Mr. 80, right here, he criticized Kyle for running Debo up the middle when the game was already decided. You obviously we were utilized. You mentioned kind of the modern day NFL, and you obviously coach at Florida State. Next time you're on, we'll talk about Bally and kind of that transition. But hey, Jimbo. But basically, I want to ask you because, Jerry ripped Kyle a new one about, protecting the star players, right? And obviously how C-Mac has been used, it's interesting because he's been leveraged the same way Roger and you were used, back in that day, right? Which kind of laid the blueprint of the running back coming out of the backfield and leverage play action. What is your take on the whole Debo injury? Kind of what are you expecting for the Niners tomorrow against Seattle and the rest of the season?
What's interesting about Jerry's take is Cal has used Debo in that same way. Am I correct?
Yes.
Has Jerry ever said anything?
No.
See, it's interesting. Until someone gets hurt, you don't say anything. So it's hard to fault Cal when that was part of what we did.
Yeah.
That was part of the offensive success. Jerry was cheering before. And I love Jerry, and I'm not criticizing what he's doing. I'm just saying, maybe Jerry should have one-on-one told him before now, hey, you might want to not run him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, we got McCaffrey now, so let's run him. But he didn't. So Kyle continued to do what he did. And then all of a sudden he gets hurt. every play a player can get hurt. Every single play. This time, unfortunately, Debo got hurt. So it's hard to criticize Kyle when he's been doing this and nobody said a thing. It's part of the strategy. The the great thing that came out of it is Debo got paid first. That's the great thing about it, because that's why Debo wanted to get paid, because he knows the risk of the way in which he plays.
Right.
And the way, I guess, the way the coach plays him. But again, I'm not criticizing Jerry, but it's easy to say when there was many opportunities before that to say, hey, Kyle, you know what? You're playing, I think you're playing Debo too much, at running back. But even if you're playing there twice a game, one of those 2 times could be a bad experience, So it's just football, man. It happened. Debo is a great player, a multifaceted type of player. So there's risk at every single, moment that he gets the ball.
100%. And now, lastly, what is your prediction for the Niners this season?
You know what, man? I tell you what, hey, I'm not shocked at Purdy. I am not shocked. This is a 4-year starter at Iowa State, a really good ball team.
Yeah.
This dude that's why, they paid that backup quarterback all the money in training camp, and then they released him.
Yeah.
They released him. Why? Because Purdy outplayed him. So I'm telling you, it does not shock me, man. Purdy is a good player. Purdy's younger brother played at Florida State here recently.
Yeah.
And then he went in the transfer portal. So I'm familiar with the family. This dude is ready, man. I mean, who knows if he's going to continue to have the success he's had, but it's not going to be because he's not ready for the moment. It's going to be because defenses, defensive coaches, they see you a few times, and then you know what, they're going to scheme for you. But I still think he's going to be able to do it, because Kyle's got to he's got to trump what these other defensive coordinators are doing to try to, get to Purdy. Continue to use Kittle, continue to use, McCaffrey, wait for Debo to come back. But we got enough guys. We just can't have anybody else getting hurt, though.
100%.
Injury bug. Absolutely.
Yeah, because when I met Tom Rathman last week, or just like a few weeks ago, he mentioned the same thing. He's like, "God, stay healthy. It's key to the run." So we'll see if they can stay healthy. But anyways, Dexter, appreciate you joining the show. I'll let you go now. Thank you so much and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Hey, man, anytime you want me to, man. You're a good dude and great interviewer, man. And thank you for letting me talk. I know I ran on a lot, but I get to, chattering, man. But thank you for entertaining me, and I hope your listeners enjoyed the talk.
Definitely. Thanks so much.